call to prayer, but suggesting that we push on. I hope you're all refreshed and ready. The next subject I want to look at is common to both anthropology and history, the question of the relationship between the individual and the wider structure.
那个下一部分要研究的课题是人类学和社会学之中，个体和更宏大的一个结构之间的关系。
How much is the life of a community or society shaped by the character of one person or one or two people, and how much by large forces of economy and politics?
就是一种文化，它在何种程度上是被一个个体或者一小撮人所塑造的，还是在另一种程度上，在何种程度上是被一个就是更宏观的经济跟政治文化塑造的？
This is a subject which it is quite difficult for anthropologists working in simple, small societies to throw much light on, because they can't see what happened before and what is going to happen in the future, whereas a historian can study a longer period of time.
这对于这个问题，对于人类学家来说是非常难以研究的，因为在研究一些比较简单构成的社会是无法预测未来，然后也没有历史记载的。跟历史学家有很多史料来就是预测未来和看以前来比的话是非常困难的。
So a historian can see how the whole world was changed by Confucius, by the Qin Emperor, by Alexander the Great, by Newton, by Napoleon, or Chairman Mao.
历史学家可以很清晰地分析世界是如何被孔子，然后被大清朝、被亚历山大大帝或者被拿破仑所改变的。
That was quick. So, someone who wrote about this said that, in fact, you have to combine the two. There would have been no Napoleon, no Chairman Mao, or other great figures if the society and the social conditions had not been there to create them. On the other hand, if this famous great person had not been there, and that is an accident, then the rest of history would be different. Historians call this the Cleopatra's nose phenomenon. Cleopatra was a very, very beautiful Egyptian princess, queen, and she was so beautiful that Antony fell in love with her. Now, if her nose, when she was born, her nose had been crooked like this, Antony would not have fallen in love with her, and the whole course of human history, Roman Empire and so on, would have been different. So, just her nose shape. If Chairman Mao had been born with a terrible stutter, so he could hard to talk, the whole course of Chinese history would be different.
就是说，历史要跟这个时代的伟人，教授说历史要跟这个时代就改变历史的那个伟人结合起来看，然后两者不是单独存在的，然后讲一个故事，就是有一个埃及的公主。然后她长了一个非常好看、非常标致的鼻子，然后导致一个大帝爱上了她，然后有了整个后边的罗马帝国。如果她的鼻子是歪的，不是这个形状的话，那个皇帝不会爱上她，然后这段历史也不会发生。然后相对着他讲，如果毛主席从一开始出生的时候是一个结巴的话，然后他也不会变成一个伟人，所以后边的这段就伟大的历史也不会发生。
This is part of a much bigger philosophical question of whether our world is determined by chance, by accident, or whether it is bound to happen in the way it is happening, predestined, as we say.
这是一个更宏大的哲学问题，就是我们的世界是由我们现在所生存的世界是由机缘巧合、意外而决定的，还是这就是宿命，从一开始就是既定的？
In some ways, one can see that it is impossible to predict the future because there are so many different possibilities. For example, you all sitting here, one of you suddenly says, "I hate Professor Macfarlane," and you get out your knife and you stab me. Now, if you stab me, I'm dead. If you don't stab me, I may go off tomorrow and then change my flight to America and go and stab President Trump. And this happy event, i.e. killing off President-elect Trump, may be not possible if you stab me now. But we don't know. This is called the butterfly's wing effect. It's called chaos theory.
就是大家大概都听懂教授刚刚讲了一个笑话，说就是未来有很多可能是无法预测的。比如说我们今天在这相聚，如果有人很不喜欢他，捅他一刀，那他就死了。如果你不捅他呢，他明天可能就飞到美国去，一刀把那个美国的新总统川普捅死了，然后就改变了这个世界。但是这些都是不可预知的。然后这个被叫做蝴蝶翅膀效应。
So it is impossible to predict the future because there are so many. On the other hand, once things have happened, for example, Brexit, the exit of Britain from the European Union, or the election of Trump, or the rise of Chairman Mao, it looks inevitable. We can now see it was certain that Trump would win, because more people hate what is happening than love what is happening. And all those who are unsatisfied and unhappy are the majority, and they will vote for a candidate who says they will change everything and bring back. So it now looks inevitable. But up to the last moment, it looked very unlikely.
就是另一方面，就是还是很多事情都是不可预知的。比如说像脱欧，然后像川普当选这些事情，在我们现在看来都是有根据的，然后是不可避免。但是在这个结果出现的前一秒钟，这些东西都是不可预测的。
I now want to turn on to something that may interest you, which is how do anthropologists and historians construct or make their data?
下一个就是我们进入下一个话题，就是历史和人类学家是如何构建他们的数据的。
Many ordinary people and many even philosophers and others thought until recently that both historians and anthropologists basically saw the world. They were like cameras. You pointed your face towards a document, read it and abstracted the facts from it. Or you pointed your head towards you, into your head came the data, and that's all there is. It's like a camera taking a photograph.
就是历史学家和人类学家他们研究的方法就像相机一样，他们像相机，然后去录制影像，或者就是阅读档案，然后再将这些资料和信息收入到自己的大脑中。
So a historian, all they had to do was to go and find a set of documents in an archive, copy them out, these are the facts, and then write their book.
历史学家所要做的就是在资料库中找到他们所需要的文献和资料，然后复制到自己的文档中，然后对他们进行分析。
Or an anthropologist just had to come to Chengdu or go to a desert island and see what was happening, write it down, these were the facts, and then he would present them, or she would present them in their book.
人类学家则用另一种方式，他们会去到一些异文化所在地、一些原住民居住的地方，然后去观察、去吸收当地的一些居民的生活习惯，然后再把这些东西记录下来，再用作自己的论文跟研究。
One famous anthropologist described this attitude as like butterfly collectors. Here were these little facts, bits of data, fluttering around in your documents or in some society, and the anthropologist or historian was someone with a butterfly net, and he saw a fact, put it like this. So these were butterfly collectors.
有人把那个人类学家形容为捉蝴蝶的人，因为这些数据和他们所要研究的这些资料的信息。在数据库中，茫茫的大海中，或者在他们所研究的社会文化中，他们就像一个捕蝴蝶的人，拿着一个网，捕虫网，然後去把这些数据收集过来，然后用作研究。
This is sometimes called positivism. So it's a philosophical attitude which says that outside us there are all these facts, and all we have to do is to learn the facts and then write them down. And China is a very positivistic civilization, as is England. You tend to believe what your government, or some of you believe what your government tells you. You tend to believe what the media tells you. And you tend to believe, because you come from a materialist, semi-Marxist basis, that the world is there, and our task is to grab hold of it like butterflies and pin it down onto our page.
我们把它称为一种乐观主义的哲学观点。然后，因为持这个观点的人相信，在我们本体之外，有非常多存在的就是现实跟信息是值得我们学习跟研究的。比如说，像中国就是一个持这样观念的一种社会，因为大部分人相信政府跟媒体所说的话。然后我们相信物质主义和马克思主义。Sorry, I lost the part after materialism and Marx.
Well, materialism and Marxism in China is a very positivistic viewpoint, which believes there is all this data and facts out there, and it's easy to find them and then pin them down onto a piece of paper or whatever.
这种观念就是相信我们能够非常容易的在我们周边获取信息，然后将它们收集在一起，然后放到我们的资料库中。
In fact, of course, that is all rubbish.
他说，其实这都是胡说八道。
We construct the facts. This is not a discovery of postmodernism. This was known to philosophers of history and anthropology 100 years ago. In fact, anyone who thinks about it carefully can see this is the case. Each of us is seeing a different room. If I got each of you to write a description of what happened in this seminar, all your descriptions would be totally different. Some of you would see more people, less people, older people, younger people. Some of you might see dragons and elephants and Harry Potter. I don't know what you're seeing. So each of you constructs, through your eyes, a different world because of your background, your expectation, your questions.
他说这之前所说的那些都是不对的。事实上，是我们在构建这个现实世界。我们现在不是生活在像100年前的历史人类学的学术文化环境里面。比如说，如果我们今天在这个会场，每个人对我们现在所处的这个环境进行一个描述，由于我们每个人的所处的背景、视角都不一样，所以我们所描述出来的这个会议的现场也都是会不一样的。
In other words, we invent our material. It isn't just given there. We have spectacles. We can't see this way or that. We can just see this little bit. And we invent the world in anthropology and history.
是我们发现我们周边的世界物质世界是由我们发现跟发明的。
This was recognized, as I mentioned, 100 years before postmodernism. For example, the founder of fieldwork anthropology, supposedly, who is often thought to be a very positivistic thinker. He appears to think that you go out and you act as a camera and you record this, you record that. This is a man called Malinowski. At the beginning of his classic account of his fieldwork, he describes how he stood on the beach when he arrived in the field, and he said to himself, I will describe these people or I will invent them. Now that's a very postmodernist remark.
就是在100年前，在那个后现代主义之前，一个人类学家的创始人一个学者诺夫斯基曾经说过，他站在一片那个海滩上，他看见一些人，他说我要描述这些人，或者我要发明这些人。
I now want to turn to the anthropological and historical imaginations.
我们现在要接着谈谈历史跟人类学的想象世界。
Here there is a difference between history and anthropology, because in history all you can rely on is what has survived from the past, either in documents or in artifacts if you're an archaeologist. You cannot reinvent materials if they did not exist and have not come down to the present. So you have a certain constraint or pressure to confine yourself to what is in the paper documents.
历史学家跟人类学家在这个方面是很不同的。在历史研究的领域，你的研究基础是过去发生的事情，是寄存的文物和文献，你不能捏造或者凭空去发明一些东西，如果你没有根据的话。
Whereas anthropologists are much more clearly inventing their data, because you go to your fieldwork site and you ask the questions, and therefore anthropology in some ways feels richer because you can smell the society, you can taste the society, as well as seeing the faces in the society, whereas as a historian you cannot go back and smell and taste and see the faces of the people, except just portraits and so on.
人类学家在这方面是非常不同的。在人类学领域的数据是由人类学家在田野调查的过程中所创造的。在田野调查中，人类学家会提问题，然后亲自去观察，然后进入当地的社会与文化，然后所以他们的数据就更加的丰富，而历史学家却不能做到这样。
But in both disciplines, the most important characteristic or skill is imagination, because when you are studying the past or another society, you have to get outside yourself. Imagination, as with children's imagination, allows you to bridge yourself, take yourself across to another person, another place, another time. And therefore the most important of all skills in anthropology and history is imagination.
在历史和人类学这两个领域之中，想象力都是一个非常重要的技能。不管是研究过去发生的事情，还是就是跟你自己所处的社会文化相异的其他的文化，你都需要利用想象力，孩童般的这种天真，走出你自己的世界的局限，进入另一个时空去进行研究跟思考。
In fact, in some ways, it would appear that both history and anthropology are nearly impossible.
从另一个层面讲， 历史学跟人类学都很有可能，就有可能是完全不可能的事情。
For example, when I went to work in Nepal, or when I went to work in Japan, or came to China, nothing of my own experience or background gave me any idea of what was going on in the minds and the hearts of the people I was encountering. I didn't understand their language, I didn't understand their history, their culture. How was I, as an Englishman, to go out to Nepal or China and enter inside the mental system, the moral system of another society? It appears impossible.
对于我来说，我去到尼泊尔、日本和中国，以我自己作为一个英国人的经历和所见所闻，是完全没有办法解释我在这些地方所见到的、所听到的、所感触到的事情的。我也不懂他们的语言。
This predicament, which also applies for historians looking back at distant periods in the past, was recognized by one of our greatest philosophers, Scottish philosophers, David Hume. And he says it in 18th century language, but I'll translate it. He says, if you present an object which is totally unfamiliar, however intelligent you are, there is no way that you can understand what it is. Supposing someone from Mars or another planet, or from an entirely different civilization, came and saw this, there is no way they could understand what this is. Is this something you eat?
Bread.
Is it bread? Is it something that is it a weapon? Is it a ritual object? The last thing they would think of is that you pull this and you blow your nose on it. So, however intelligent, if you've never come across something before, however intelligent you are, you can't work out. You've got no link to your own experience. And that is the position of anthropologists and historians about a great deal of what they study.
对于历史学家和人类学家来说，很多时候他们是完全无法理解他们所见到的一个完全就是新的事物的。麦克法兰教授举了一个就是著名的学者所说的话，说如果有一个全新的物体展现在你的面前，然后你完全无法对它进行解释和理解。不论你多么的智慧或者多么有知识，然后他以这个纸巾盒子为例，说如果一个火星人来把它拿在手里的话，会不知道它是一件武器还是一个食物，然后他肯定不会想象它是一个纸巾盒子，然后抽出一张纸巾来擤鼻涕。
In fact, as I was thinking of this example, probably this is a weapon, because firstly, if I'm trying to kill Dr. Chen Bo, I get one of these and I stuff it in his mouth and he is killed. And then when all the blood comes out, I mop it up with a bit of this. So this probably is a weapon.
麦教授说它可能是一件武器吧，然后我拿它去如果我想杀死陈波教授的话，我就冲他投掷这个纸巾，然后他流了很多血的话，我还可以抽出一张纸巾来擦擦我身上的那个血污。
So, how do you get over this problem? You get over it through imagination. You guess. When I went to Nepal or when I went to Japan, I guessed from my own experience and other societies I've been to. Maybe when they do this is the reason they are doing this, or what they think they're doing. You have a guess, and then you ask them and try and find out if your guess is right. And this is how children learn, how we all learn, all the time. And so you make an imaginative guess and then test it. This is how historians and anthropologists work.
所以历史学家和人类学家解决这个问题的方法就是使用想象力，然后去到一个完全陌生的环境之中，或者就是接触到一件完全新兴的事物的时候，就根据自己的经历或者之前的学术经验去猜测，然后去问当地人一些问题来验证自己的想法，这也是孩童学习的方法。
Of course, there are many other technical methods that historians and anthropologists need to learn: how to read documents, how to read languages, how to do field work, and so on. I won't deal with those practical sides because I'm dealing with the philosophical basis.
当然也有很多种学术研究的方法，比如如何研究文献、如何学习语言和田野调查，这些都是非常必要的。
I now want to talk about the necessity of combining anthropology with history.
现在我想聊一聊，将历史和人类学的视角相结合的重要性的必要性。
The moment you think about it, you realize that in order to understand what is happening, you need both anthropology of the present and history of the past.
如果你想要理解现在世界中发生一些事情，你就需要人类学来研究现在发生的事情，以历史学的视角去观察过去。
For example, how could you possibly understand China without understanding Chinese history? Nothing around you, your educational system, your Gaokao system, for example, the Gaokao you can't understand unless you understand the Qin Emperor and the rise of Confucian bureaucracy. This is just a continuation of an ancient educational system.
就是如果他举例子说，如果不理解中国的历史的话，如何能理解当代的中国呢？就像高考制度一样，它就是一个清代的科举制度的一个在现代社会的一种新的形式的体现。
Or you can't understand your relations with your parents and the family system unless you know a good deal about the history of the family system and the Confucian ideals of authority that have gone on through 2,000 years of Chinese history.
相应的，在家庭关系之中，想要理解当今中国的跟孩子跟父母之间的关系，如果你不理解中国2000年历史中孔子思想中家族之间的关系的话，是很难理解当代孩子跟父母之间的关系的。
Or again, you will not understand at all about why Britain voted to leave the European Union unless you understand English history and the feeling that has been going on for 1,000 years that England is very, very different from France and Italy and so on.
相应的，你也无法理解，就是现在英国发生的脱欧事件。如果你不了解在英国的之前的1000多年历史之中，英国和欧洲的其他各国是多么的不同。
On the other hand, you cannot really understand or make use of history unless you also understand something of the present through observing it and acting as an anthropologist within it.
相应的，如果你就是你需要像一个人类学家一样去观察、去理解现实社会，才能够更好的理解过去、理解历史。
So what you need to do is to combine the two. For example, Lord Acton, who was an English historian, said, "Study problems, not periods." So we, as social scientists, historians, anthropologists, and others, need to study a problem. And if that problem takes us to anthropology or history or biology or anywhere, we need to follow that problem rather than just confine ourselves to a particular discipline.
所以将两者相结合是非常必要的。有一个麦教授提到一个英国的学者，他提到我们要研究问题，而不是研究一个特定的历史时段。然后在社会科学领域要研究一个社会问题，然后用 人类学、社会学甚至是生物学的视角去解释这个问题，而不是把自己封闭的放在一个单独的学科中。
So, for example, when I wrote a book about glass, about this stuff, the problem was why glass has changed the world and why glass didn't develop in China and other things like this. And in order to study that, I needed anthropology, history, the study of eyes, ophthalmology, art history, what effect glass had on art, material science, how glass is made, many, many disciplines all contribute to the study of that particular thing. And if you just confine yourself to one discipline, you will not understand it.
麦教授举了一个例子，就是他写了一本书叫《玻璃的世界》，他在研究玻璃是如何改变世界的。然后他在写这本书的时候，他从历史学、人类学，甚至是医学，然后物质科学，甚至是艺术史的角度都查阅了资料。你无法从这些学科中的单独一个入手，然后去看这个问题，就那样都是片面的。
I want to end by pointing out something which you may not have really thought about, which is that all of you are trapped in your understanding of the world by the fact that you are growing up in what we call a modern world. I define modernity as the separation of different parts of our lives. So a modern society, like America or Europe and increasingly China, separates the four parts of human life. That is belief and ritual, that is religion. That is social life and family life. That is production and distribution, that is the economy. And that is power and politics. So there are four parts of our lives. In most societies, in all of Chinese history until 30, 40 years ago, till the Shenzhen experiment, all four were together. Communism puts them all together, and before communism, in Chinese civilization, the Confucian model brings them all together.
麦教授想提出一个他觉得我们可能都没有想过的问题。他觉得我们现在都被困在自己的一个非常狭隘的世界里面。然后他认为当代世界的当代性把我们的生活割裂了。然后现代世界有4个部分组成，有信仰、社会生活、家庭、经济和政治这4个部分。在孔夫子的时代，这4个部分是一个整体，而现在这些4个部分是割裂的。
But modern individualistic, capitalistic society of the kind that dominates the West and increasingly China separates these four from each other. So you are being brought up through your educational system and your ideology to separate each of these different things. And as a product of this, and I was a product of this, it's very difficult for you to then go back into worlds where they are not separated. So when I went to Nepal for the first time, I went to a village where they were all closely together. And if you go to Japan now, still in this great civilization, all four are closely together. But it's very difficult for me, or increasingly for you, to understand such worlds.
在现代世界中的个人主义、资本主义都是在西方世界，包括当代中国非常主流的一种价值观。然后我们所受的教育，然后把之前说的4大文明4大块割裂了，然后我们很难理解，这四大文明在一起是一个整体的时候。麦教授提到他去尼泊尔和去印度的时候，深切地感受到在那里，然后这4大文明是没有被割裂的，始终是一个整体。
So to conclude, I have had the great good fortune to live in the borderlands you have a great Chinese classic, you know the one I mean, the marshland, or it's about people, the bandits who are living on the edge of Chinese society. You know the book I mean, Outlaws of the Marshes, or something like this. So people like them, I live on the borderland between history and anthropology. I go back and forth. Half my books are in one, half in the other. And this is a wonderful position of being able to be fluid in your writing and working between disciplines. And I don't really know whether I'm an anthropologist or a historian, and I don't even worry about that question, because what we are interested in is human beings, not whether we are anthropologists or historians. And we want to discover new things about the world. We want to do what the great Albert Einstein, the philosopher, said. He was asked how it was that he was able to discover the most important scientific fact of the 20th century, relativity. And he said, it was not because I'm clever, I'm not particularly clever, or good at anything. But when I was a child, I asked simple, childlike questions. What is time? What is space? What is the meaning of life? And the older people in his family and so on said, oh, no, Albert, you'll never understand that. You're just a child. Just forget about it for now. When you grow up, you can start asking these questions. But he went on asking the questions. And when he grew up, he noticed that everyone else had forgotten the questions, but he'd remembered them. So he went on asking these childlike questions throughout his life. And as a result, he changed the world. So I hope all of you will be filled with questions and will be self-confident and will explore the world and, like Einstein, change it. Thank you very much. So we have, I think, 10 minutes.
Just a minute. Finish the translate. Yeah.
麦教授刚刚说，他觉得他自己是非常幸运的，因为他得以跨过各个学科，然后从各个学科的角度去理解他所感兴趣的终极的问题，就是人类本身。然后他只是对人类本身跟人类社会的种种现象非常感兴趣，而非一个单独的学科。然后他引用了他最喜欢的一个哲学家、科学家爱因斯坦说的话，说他之所以有今天的这样的成就，并不是因为他有多么的聪明，而是因为他是孩童的时候就喜欢问很多很大的问题，比如什么是时间，什么是空间，人生的意义是什么。但是大人们就会告诉他说，这些问题等你长大就懂了。但是等爱因斯坦长大的时候，他发现周围所有的成年人都已经遗忘了这些问题。他做的事情只不过是继续持续的以一个孩童的心态去向这个世界发问。所以他最后对大家的期许就是希望大家能像爱因斯坦一样保持孩童的心，然后不断的发问，不断的探索周边的世界。
I thank my two translators. So there's 10 minutes if anyone would like to ask me a simple question or two. Anyone like to ask anything?
Okay, ask a question. Simple, but this is cross-field. How to use the multidisciplinary field to do research or whatever. So the history and anthropology, you're still using two terms. One is history, another is anthropology. But it is now in contemporary time, it is more important to use multidisciplinary. And in that case, do you guess or predict in future if it is still necessary to divide all these different fields? If this multidisciplinary is so important to find out or the truth or the solving the problem or whatever for it. So do you think in the near future, do you predict such kind of a situation?
Thank you. Do you want to translate?
这位教授，
你自己说吧。
我自己因为他这个是交叉学科的这么一个案例吧，就是历史和这个人类学怎么把它用在一个这个研究这个当中。那就是他说这个交叉学科是非常重要的，因为我们解决问题、发现问题、做研究。那我就问，因为他在研究当中，他还是用这个历史和人类学这么两个概念，好像有些时候在分开用，有些时候他又在好像合在一起用。所以我说这个，因为这个现在的学科越来越重视这个交叉学科的话，那就很多时候我们就不知道我到底是人类学家，还是历史学家，还是其他学科的人。只是个身份，我就是什么什么，但是我的专业、我的学科来说，我就根本就现在就分不了我到底是哪个领域的人，所以呢，我就说这个以后的发展方向的话，到底这些学科以后就有没有必要分继续让它分下去，就是到底历史和人类学需不需要就是把它分得很清楚，或者有一个时间的会不会有这么能够分的时间有没有？我就是问一下这个。
There will undoubtedly be departments and universities which teach a joint course, historical anthropology, so that there will be some merging like that. That is already happening. And you have journals of historical anthropology and things like this. But I don't think they will totally merge for several reasons. One is that in the past there have been different disciplines, and the people who have been trained and taught in these will not be happy to merge. So academic politics and the way in which you divide up a thing like a university means that you have specialisms. And so although you can sometimes sciences merge together, so you have molecular biology or whatever, on the whole you tend to keep disciplines which are separated apart. So there's a historical reason why they will not, I think, all fuse together. The other is that there is a sufficient difference in the methods, questions and approaches of them to make it sensible to have some specialization, particularly at the lower level, at the undergraduate, even PhD level. Because it's like learning a musical instrument. You learn to play the piano, which is a historian, and you learn to play the violin, which is an anthropologist. Now, it doesn't make sense to put those two together. What may well happen is that you learn to play the piano, later you learn to play the violin, and you move between them. But they are different, and therefore I think that it's more efficient to keep a certain distance. But by keeping that distance, you constantly get cross-fertilization between the two. So I think they tend to go like this, historically. You know, what grow apart, grow together, grow. At the moment they're growing together, and then there will be a period when they grow further apart, and so on, for various reasons.
Yeah, I'm thinking about this because in terms of in traditional Chinese medicine or Tibetan medicine, the knowledge of this human body is not kind of separated. Like if you have a problem with heart, the doctor will not give you medicine that is particularly for your heart, but he may well give you a medicine for your lungs or liver or whatever, something else that will lead you. Heart problem will be resolved. So kind of this the
Holistic.
Yeah, the Eastern culture in traditional, they don't see things separately.
Yeah.
They think
Holistic.
holistically. Yeah.
Do you want to translate?
The first part, yes. 刚刚麦教授解决这个回答这个问题的时候，他就是说。他就回答问题从来都不是非黑即白的那种，他就说那个，这些不同的学科跨学科的这种学术研究方法，是会存在，然后这些学科是会相互交集，比如说现在会有新闻人类学，但是并不需要完全融合在一起。在过去，每个学科都是独立的，这是一个历史因素，然后 学者们也愿意成为自己领域的一个专家，而不是一个大熔炉，大家都在一起。这是历史因素。然后从研究方法的方面是有必要划分的，就尤其是在本科生学习这些研究方法的时候，人类学跟历史就像学乐器一样，比如说历史学的研究方法就是钢琴，人类学的研究方法就是小提琴。你可以分开学习这两门乐器，然后你一会儿练练这个，一会儿练练那个，两个都很精通，然后在必要的时候你把它们相结合。所以这些都不是绝对的，是相对的，在某一个时刻这都是独立的学科，但是在必要的时候它们就会有些交集。
I was going to respond. Yes, sir. Could I?
Yeah.
Very much related question. For me, after I listened to your talk, I was a little bit shocked and felt a little bit painful to hear that. For you, there's no problem for you to be standing in between two disciplines. But for me, I was trained to be an anthropologist, and I try to invest all my time, energy into this field, and I treated anthropology as my belief. And so, in some way, I don't think I can separate my life with anthropology. Otherwise, it will be meaningless. So, for me, if there's a kind of historical anthropology, it will be anthropology itself, and its expansion of the anthropology, not as you described as the convergence, merging of the two disciplines. And so far, I'm teaching as historical anthropology this semester at the other campus to the undergraduates. But in the first class, I told them very clearly that for me, as an anthropologist, to teach you students of history major, historical anthropology, is very different from that situation in which I taught to anthropology undergraduates, historical anthropology. So for those historical students, I will tell them how to learn anthropology. Or for anthropological students, I will teach them how to learn doing anthropology historically. So you can see that quite different in this very different departments and disciplines, and so that's why I feel a little bit painful. That's the way you kill me.
Okay, well you better tell them your pain.
我是想说的，听了教授的话，我感到很痛苦，然后有点像那个文化冲击的那种感觉，就是因为我的博士训练是人类学的，然后呢，我是把这个人类学作为我的一种，不但是人生职业，而且也是一种信仰。也就是说，当我去研究历史的时候，我是把我的这个研究看成是人类学的一种拓展，而不是两个学科的结合啊。然后我的一个感受就是，我这学期在江安上给本科生上历史人类学，选课的基本上都是历史系的同学。然后呢，我就会告诉他们说，我跟你们讲历史人类学，跟我在人类学系讲历史人类学是完全不一样的。如果是给你们讲的话，我就会告诉你们怎么样去学人类学。而我要给人类学系的学生讲历史人类学呢，我会让他们去用历史的那样一种，或者是看历史，怎么样用人类学的方法去研究历史啊，这是两个完全不一样的，所以我会感到有一点那个painful， 有点痛苦。
Well, I'll very briefly. In fact, I won't directly answer it, but you gave a paper at there's a Sichuan conference, which, remembering the pictures and so on, which is what you could see, were historical. You showed Lhasa, Kathmandu, Chengdu, and they were archaeological pictures of ancient ruins and bits of ancient history. So I suspect it's really a matter of wording. You feel that you would like to embrace, incorporate history within anthropology. That's fine because you're trained as an anthropologist. Other historians would like to embrace anthropology within history. But really what matters is what you do, and what you actually do. If you're studying Kathmandu, you don't just go to a street in Kathmandu and start talking to people in Kathmandu. You look at the history of Kathmandu and how it has evolved and so on, and compare it. So in practice, you're doing history as well as anthropology. But, so it's not such a great difference, I think, between our approaches. So don't feel painful.
Professor, I also have a childlike question. During my research in small groups beyond the Tibetan border and the east part of the Tibetan highland, and I found that there are some group people called no writing language. Or maybe they have ones, but at least they don't have none.
Language. No written language.
Yeah, no written language. Yeah. But there are some special description. I mean, the oral history, story, not history. When I treat these kind of cases, I found, should I treat it as history or some kind of text as anthropologists should treat? So, can you give me how to treat this kind of case when we face this kind of problem?
Well, it's not a childlike question.
Do you want to translate?
Do you want to translate your question?
我说我在就金丹关东沿的一些小村落中，被称之为没有书写历史或者说没有文字的这些群体的时候呢，我发现那个他们确实现在没有文字的书写，但是有一个很特殊的，他们有故事讲。这个故事呢，当我以前是学历史的，然后现在是学人类学的，当我看到这些故事的时候，我把它当成一个历史呢，还是要把它当成一个人类学的文本来研究？然后这对我来说一个是身份的一个矛盾，另外一个是研究对象的一个认识的矛盾，所以我请教教授给我这个解答。
Well, the first thing I would say is I hope after this meeting you will, if you don't know them already, you will talk to our Nepali friends, Tek Gurung there, because he is very interested in exactly that area and the oral history of that area, and he's just starting a PhD on that. And he comes, and Anita, his wife, comes from a society which until very recently was like the one that you're describing. They had no written language. They still have no written language. They're called gurungs. So all they have are oral texts, myths, stories, legends. Now, at one time, historians said, we have written documents, these are true, and oral cultures like the one you described and the one I worked in have just word of mouth. And these are myths. There's bits of truth and bits of non-truth in them. And so they're very different. You can't rely on the oral myths, but you can rely on the written. Recently, increasingly, people have realized that there is not a great gap between them. That what we know about the history of a culture is also, a lot of it, mythical. That is, it's half true, but half invented. and that the oral myths of some of these societies are very accurate, and many of the facts in them are true. So the gap between written texts and myths is very small. And so, in fact, to answer your question, you should approach them both as an anthropologist and as a historian, not one or the other, but together. And then you will understand more about what you are finding. Okay?
教授给出的意见是，首先他希望这位学者跟他的学生、跟他的尼泊尔朋友Tag 跟他的妻子 Anita， 他们都是从尼泊尔来的古龙人，然后他们他们的族人跟这位学者所叙述到的那些村落非常相似，都是没有书写历史，只有口述历史和传说的。然后艾伦说，在历史学家眼中，只有书写的历史才是真实的，而口述历史的研究则不一定是不可靠的。但是现在人们意识到两者之间的差距并不是很大，书写的历史也是一样半真半假的，口述历史在有一些区域倒是非常的精确，所以差异不是特别大。他建议就是做研究的时候可以双管齐下，两种方式都用，然后能够帮助你更好的理解。
So one more question. I think there was one there, yes.
May I stand up, Professor?
Yes, do.
Okay. Well, you were saying in one of your comments earlier that, well, basically you've been saying this whole afternoon that we should combine history and anthropology as two kinds of related studies of humanities. I'd like to expand on that because I'm a writer and I'm interested in humanities in general. I'd like to expand on that. Say perhaps it's important to take all the humanities together when you're thinking about trying to understand people, or when you're studying anthropology, perhaps. Because well, you can get a lot out of psychology. You can get out a lot of literary analysis. I think the potential for crossbreeding is just massive. That's what I want to say.
This is.
Translate. Oh, himself.
Can you translate it?
自己要说一下吗？
I'm not sure my Chinese is good enough.
有啊。
他说就是他觉得就是教授整个下午都在讲，我们应该以历史和人类学相结合的视角来看问题。他说他自己是一个作家，然后他其实是
我是作者。
作者，是一个作者，然后就是他觉得这种从就是各个人文学科一个综合的视角来看问题，来做研究是非常必要的。大概是这样。
Well, that is a very useful ending comment, because you're obviously right that, as I pointed out with the cup, that there are many approaches, and if you want to understand a phenomenon, if you want to understand why we have these flowers here on the table, you might find something from literary analysis. You may find that this pattern of flower arrangement is in the great Chinese classical novel, The Dream of the Red Mansion. You look at that and you will find the same patterning here. If you look at aesthetic tastes of Taoism, you find that there's some Taoist elements in here, yin and yang, for example. Or you could come from, so literary analysis, aesthetic analysis, psychology. Your eyes, this is biology, psychology. Chinese eyes, if you take your glasses off, or take out your contact lenses, you will see the red very distinctly. If I put red and blue here, you will see red but not blue, because your eyes have been destroyed by reading Confucian Chinese characters, and so you are short-sighted, and the light waves that hit your eyes are much stronger at the red end of the spectrum. So you need to understand that flower arrangement. You need to know something about Chinese eyes, and so on. You could get all the disciplines to explain those flowers there. history, anthropology, aesthetics, literary analysis, psychology, biology, all play a part. That seems to make it very complicated. So what we do is just select one or two or three, which are seem to be the most significant. And therefore, there is, I'll end with my favorite historian in many ways, or one of my two favorite historians. He was a French historian called Marc Bloch. Marc Bloch, and he wrote the best book that's ever been written about how you work as a historian, called The Craft of the Historian, The Historian's Craft. He wrote this when he was waiting to be shot by the Gestapo in a prisoner of war camp in the Second World War, which he was shot in 1944. And he was the great founder of social history in France. And it's a wonderful short book, and in one of his statements he says, the historian is like the giant, that is huge creature, of the fairy story. And in the fairy story of the giants in Western mythology, the giant goes, fee, fi, fo, fum, I smell the blood of an Englishman. So giants smell human blood. And Marc Bloch says the historian is like the giant of the fairy story. Wherever he smells blood, that is where he wants to go. So we as historians chase after human and other animal mysteries and wonders and puzzles and problems, and we pursue them with whatever technology, whatever discipline seems appropriate at the time. So I hope all of you will do that. Would you like to translate?
Alan 先是举了一个例子，就是以桌上的这个花艺为例去讲，就是我们去阐释一个事物的时候，可以从多个视角入手。比如说，如果你要理解现在我们在四川、在成都、在中国的这个省份桌上的一个花艺装置，就要理解中国人的视角。然后，如果把它放在这儿的话，我们可能只会看到那个红色，因为红色是我们文化里边一个非常重要的颜色，所以就是我们会看到它。如果你从从心理学，然后从文献研究的角度去看，又会得出其他的结论。然后，如果你从那么多的角度去入手的话，这个事情就会变得非常复杂。所以，通常我们会简化这个问题，从1到2个最重要的学科跟角度入手去阐释。然后他举例，他举到一个自己非常非常欣赏的一个法国的历史学家马克，所说他所在狱中写下2战的时候，他在狱中。在执行死刑之前写下一本书，就叫《如何像历史学家一样工作》。书中提到历史社会，他是一个非常重要的历史社会创始人。然后历史学家马克说，历史学家就像童话中的巨人一样，巨人闻到了血腥味儿就会非常的兴奋。历史学家也是一样，他闻到血腥味儿就会从那边入手，闻到在战争、在人类冲突的领域去做研究。而人类我们学者一直在不停地研究人类社会中的一些问题跟现象，我们总是应该选择最适合的学科跟视角去入手来研究。
So I want to end. I've been in China with my wife for 30 days now, and we've had the great privilege of coming to your university, which we first came to in 2004, and we sat in this room, I remember, with Professor Xu looking at cameras and looking at some of the films she'd taken in Tibet in this room. And I never imagined in 2004 that I'd still be coming back in 2016. And it's been a great pleasure and honour for both of us to come. So I want to just thank one or two people. I want to thank the cameraman, who has accompanied us to the new campus and helped us in various ways. So thank you very much for your help. And also, as before, my two trusty translators over here, my friends who have come, obviously very significantly my co-partner in all this work, who does all the work with me, and as well as wielding the camera here, my wife Sarah, and Professor Xu Jun, who has made this revisit and a number of revisits possible, and Professor Chen both for inviting me to give this lecture. And I wish you all success and happiness. And remember the rhyme, fee, fo, fi, fum. I smell the blood of an Englishman. 谢谢。
这样，这个艾伦教授给我们带来了精彩的这个讲座，我提议啊，我们以热烈的掌声再次感谢艾伦教授的精彩。同时感谢大家来到四川大学藏学研究所来这个听这个讲座啊，欢迎常来。